Hi there, welcome to the Ivory Tower Collections Lab. I've got a short video I want to show you today in regards to an issue I come across fairly often with the Model 1 Intellivision consoles, specifically the models that use these GTE 3539 SRAMs for the video. Almost all of the consoles will have at least one of these present because they also use one here as part of the RAM setup as well. But this one isn't usually the problem child. It's usually one or both of these that can cause a problem. And what is the problem? Well, the issue is that the console will seem to work just fine. But then over time, it might start to develop graphical anomalies, or the entire system might start to shut down and not want to play games again until it's cooled off a bit. Now there's another reason why this can happen, which has to do with the 3906 transistors, but those have already been replaced on this console. But the other issue is because of these two chips. Specifically what happens is, over time, I think due to what's known as, I think it's called 10 migration, the ground and 5 volts between these chips starts to develop little tendrils of connection points inside the IC, that it starts to essentially cause low-grade shorts in these chips, which affects the entire system. Let me show you what I mean. I currently have the two original 3539s back in this board. I've already gone ahead and installed sockets because I've already confirmed all of this. You'll notice I've got X's on them because I marked them as being bad. Now, here's what I noticed whenever this particular console came in with these symptoms. What I do is I use my multimeter right here, and I check the resistance between the ground and the main 5 volt input. I usually use the ground point way over here because this is one of the furthest points for ground, so it has about the longest amount of distance to travel. And then the 5 volts that I check over here is, again, real close to the input. So let me show you what this particular console is reading. This is going to be difficult for me to do, but I'll try to do this. Okay, now because I'm not going to be able to check the furthest points while holding my phone while doing this, I'm going to check the ground real close to the system board here, in addition to the 5 volts here. And by doing that, again, I'm checking a ground point. My phone will focus. Pretty close to the input section and the 5 volt right there at that little Y connection, I call it, right after that 0 ohm resistor. And you will see that on my meter, I'm reading only about 44.5 ohms of resistance. That's enough to cause an issue. And in fact, if I had my meter in continuity mode, it would be beeping, indicating a short. Now, not all electronics will actually be shorted whenever you see something like this, but in the case of the Intellivision, ideally you want that to be over 300 ohms, really at minimum. And that's not what's going on here. So let me go ahead and replace these chips out, and I'll show you what kind of readings I get after that. Okay, I've now removed the two original offending GTE 3539s off of the system, and I've got two new old stock replacements in place. You can see them right there. Also, you can see I've denoted that I've replaced them with these little silver dots that I put in the dimples on the ceramic packaging. Okay, I still have the other original 3539 sitting here, and I've actually placed a check mark on it to indicate that it seems to be doing all right. Now, let's do that same test again where I check the resistance between ground and 5 volts to see what we get. So again, I'm going to use my ground probe right here, okay, on this trace here, and then the 5 volts is going to go over here. So let me try that again. Okay, there we go. So I've got my ground there, I've got my 5 volts there, and now we are reading over 500 ohms. This is much better and much more in line with what I would expect. So it's just something to keep in mind that, you know, one of the common issues with the Model 1 Intellivisions, those that contain the GTE 3539s as their SRAM chips, can over time develop internal shorts within those chips. It doesn't prevent the chips from working. In fact, when I tested these in my chip tester, they passed all their tests. But yeah, you can actually take the probes and you can actually check between pins. Well, now my phone's not going to want to focus again. But if you take your meter leads and you check for the resistance between pins 11 and 22, which is actually where the 5 volts and ground come into these ICs, you'll also see that they have low resistance on them. Both of these chips here are reading less than 100 ohms whenever I check that, and that's not good. Whereas these replacements that I've installed are reading about 1K between the 5 volt and ground on the chips internally, which is much more in line with what I would expect. So again, just a real quick short video just to let you know that that's another thing to check whenever working and servicing your Intellivision Model 1 console. If you see the presence of those larger GTE 3539s, you definitely want to check to see what the value of the resistance is between 5 volts and ground, and make sure that it is well over around, I prefer to see the 400 to 500 ohm reading, but anything over 300 should be fine. So again, just a real quick video on this. Thanks again, and I'll catch you guys another time.